Hi, everybody. Stefan Molyneux from Freedom Main Radio. Hope you're doing well. Back with Peter Schiff, an economist, financial broker, dealer, author, frequent guest on national news, the host of the Peter Schiff Show podcast, CEO of Euro Pacific Capital, and chairman of Schiff Gold. You can find his info at schiffgold.com, schiffradio.com, and Europac. Welcome, Peter. How you doing?
Oh, thanks for having me on your program once again, Stefan.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. All right. So the Dow is doing well, popped over 18,000. Jobs are being created left, right, and center. Okay, there's that little job of the pesky national debt. But so aren't the people who have been preaching this doom and gloom? I mean, look at the numbers. Everything's looking great.
Yes, look at the numbers. The numbers tell a very different story from the rosy scenario that they're trying to spin. Yes, we are creating jobs, but we're creating part-time jobs that pay very little to replace the higher-paying full-time jobs that we destroy. But nobody talks about that. Look, Intel just announced yesterday they're laying off, 12,000 people, 11% of their workforce. These are good jobs. What are these displaced Intel workers going to do? I mean, if they get 2 or 3 jobs tending bar and waiting tables, that's going to count as job creation, because you lose one good job and you replace it with 2 or 3 lousy jobs. That is the secret behind the job creation. It is really destruction. And I've said this before. That is why Donald Trump is getting so much support. And that is why a guy like Bernie Sanders can rise from obscurity and almost be tied in the national polls with Hillary Clinton, who is a household word, who nobody else even wanted to run against because it was a sure thing that she would be coronated. Yet this New York Jew, an avowed socialist, can get all this support. Why? Because the economy is a disaster. That's why. And if it wasn't for the minorities who apparently, don't even know about Bernie Sanders, so they're just voting for Hillary Clinton. But if you just look at, the middle class white vote, overwhelmingly, certainly male going to Bernie Sanders. Why? Because the jobs aren't there. This is not a 4.9% or 5% unemployment economy. This is still a recession. The recession has never really ended. It's just a fantasy. Yes, on Wall Street, the recession ended, but, the economy is not Wall Street.
Well, and of course, the Dow is up, and apparently the business of American corporations has turned from producing goods and services that are affordable and appreciated by the consumer to going into massive debt to buy back their own stock. Boy, what a great business model. I mean, how can that possibly work?
Well, it works if you happen to own the stock that's getting bought back, right? And you can sell it at a profit. But yes, we want businesses investing in capital to increase labor productivity so that workers can earn more real money and that prices in real terms can come down, and so consumers can enjoy higher living standards. None of that is happening. This has just been a bubble. And the problem is air has been coming out of it. That's why we relapsed back into recession. And meanwhile, yes, the stock market is going up, but not as fast as the price of silver, not as fast as the price of gold. So in real terms, the stock market is actually going down faster now than it was last year. I mean, look at silver, exploded yesterday to a new high for the year, above 17. It's up again today. Gold continues to rise. So in real terms, the U.S. stock market is going down. And in fact, the dollar is now declining. It's been declining all year against pretty much all the currencies in the world. So it's just an illusion that the market is going up.
Well, what we got here is Standard & Poor 500 earnings are down over 18%. And this is not good news.
No, and it's going to get worse. And, by the way, oil prices are now going up and gasoline prices have been on the rise at the pump. And this is going to be a problem for consumers. Everybody thinks that, the consumer didn't benefit from cheap gas like everybody thought. Yes, he did. He did benefit. It's just that you couldn't see it because he was suffering from rising healthcare costs, from rising rent. So there were other problems. The fact that he got a reprieve with cheap gas help take some of the sting out of, your rent hikes or your higher insurance premiums. But now that gas prices are rising too, along with everything else, and by the way, the Fed can't even acknowledge the increased inflation because they can't raise interest rates, so they have to pretend that the inflation doesn't exist, but the consumer can't pretend. He has to pay those higher prices. taxes. So that means corporate earnings are going to be under even more pressure as more of somebody's diminished paychecks goes to necessities like energy. There's less left over for consumer discretionary purchases, and that's where a lot of corporations earn their revenue.
Well, and there's this terrible thing that happens, and it really is the story of the last half century in the West, this constant cannibalizing of the future in order to buy votes in the here and now. Of course, when interest rates are low and inflation is high, everybody takes their money out and uses it to buy things, especially, of course, when prices are rising relative to income. And that means there's very little money left in the banks, which is available to entrepreneurs for the capital equipment that increases worker productivity in the next generation.
Yeah, everybody thinks low interest rates are good. Donald Trump even came out and said that, he thinks that the Fed is doing a good job by keeping interest rates low, and he feels if they raise rates, everything's going to collapse, which is true. But that does not mean we should keep rates low, because the problem that we have, and Trump talks all the time about the fact that, we've lost all these manufacturing jobs. Well, why is that? It's not because we have bad negotiators. It's because we have regulations and taxes that destroy savings and investment. And so if we want those jobs back, we need more savings and investment. And the way you get more savings when you don't have enough savings is higher interest rates. Higher interest rates encourage all the things that we need to have real economic growth and to have higher paying jobs. So if you have a shortage of savings and a lack of capital, low interest rates are bad. The market needs to bring interest rates up so that we can attract capital and savings again. Now, yes, will it be more difficult for somebody to go borrow money to buy a television set or to buy a new car or to buy a house? Yes. But we don't want people borrowing money to buy those things when we need more production and more jobs. We want entrepreneurs borrowing money to expand and buy plant and equipment and to modernize and update and to make their workers more productive. Well, we can't have both. It's one or the other. And so if we need more legitimate capital investment, then we need less buying for consumption. And the way you do that is with higher interest rates, because higher interest rates will take consumer debt out of the equation, but it will allow businesses to invest because they can generate a profit. So if interest rates go up, and you can afford to pay maybe 8 or 10% because you can invest in equipment that will return a 15 or 20% return. But right now, none of that savings is even there because there's no money at banks. Instead, you get the money from the Federal Reserve, and the consumer just spends it.
Oh, it's weird. It's weird to me. People are always saying, well, if we raise interest rates, there'll be these negative repercussions. It's like, yeah. And if you're an alcoholic and you stop drinking, you're going to get the shakes. But the solution to that is not to just keep drinking.
Yeah, anyway, absolutely. And the crazy part about it is we've been on this stimulus high for years, and everybody was under the delusion that the Fed could take away the stimulus and we'd all stay high. And, you even have Fed governors admitting that the Fed basically doped the economy up with heroin and cocaine, and now all they're giving us is Ritalin, because they're still giving us some stimulus, but it's not as much, And if you're a coke addict or a heroin addict, and you come to your pusher and he says, "Look, I'm a little low on heroin, but you take some Ritalin," it's not going to do the trick, right? It's not enough. And so people expected that we could get by without the stimulus. We can't. Now, the reality is, yes, what the Fed should do is let interest rates go up, stop artificially suppressing them, and let this entire phony economy collapse, because it has to collapse. Because until it does, we're never going to build a legitimate recovery that's going to produce the rising living standards and higher wages that everybody wants.
Well, but of course, that's the economic argument and the free market argument, the Austrian school argument. The political argument is like, well, if I'm in power, if I'm sort of the president or a governor, even somebody has control over these issues. I guess the president doesn't directly, but if I were able to achieve that, well, the economy would go to hell, but the benefits wouldn't accrue until long after I'm voted out of office. So this is, I think, one of the reasons why it keeps going in such a short-term time frame.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if you get 4 years for a president, I bet if we bit the bullet right away, by the end of the first term, we could be well on the way to a good recovery. I mean, the free market is efficient. It cleans house very quickly. So yes, we can get a lot of short-term pain, kind of like, the Band-Aid. Do you want to peel it off slowly or just rip it off? And if we just rip off that Band-Aid, yes, it's going to hurt for a while, 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years, but then we're going to start to see real recovery. And so it's possible that somebody could get reelected if he does the right thing early in his term. But you know what? We need a president who doesn't care about getting reelected.